Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. NewzRoom Afrika ran a news story where they did an interview with a gentleman named William Bird today, the 15th of March, 2025. And in this conversation, the host began talking about some issues in South Africa and bootstrapped some things together that is simply untrue. Now, first, I'm going to say a couple things. NewzRoom Afrika, I'm humbled that you take the time to watch my content. I appreciate that. But I would appreciate if you use it accurately and objectively. And we're going to talk about that now.
Coverage of the worsening relations between South Africa and the United States, largely over misinformation about the country's land reform policies.
So in this video, the commentator talks about the recent rise of racial intolerance, not something I talked about.
Professor Gouws of the Stellenbosch University about this recent rise of racial intolerance among South Africans following the breakdown of these relations between South Africa and the U.S.
The video they're referencing is one I did a week ago in which Professor Gouws of Stellenbosch University made many comments about America and about U.S. actions vis-a-vis South Africa. I didn't talk about racial intolerance there, and it has nothing to do with me. So that's disingenuous for that reporter to put this in her commentary.
The recent AfriForum and Solidarity mission to the U.S. has emphasized the racial divisions among South Africans.
Now she continues talking about a backlash of dispelling the land grabs of South Africa, mentioning me, not by name, but stating who I am quite clearly, a colonel in America. Well, I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel. I have no relationship or ties to the U.S. government. I speak of my own volition and don't speak for the government of the United States. And this backlash from me was not a backlash about dispelling land grabs. That's not at all what the video was. 8-minute, 33-second video, and I never mentioned land grabs in South Africa. That wasn't what it was about. My challenge to Professor Gouws of Stellenbosch University was I asked for her to list the sanctions that are imposed on South Africa because she claimed in the interview that the United States imposed sanctions on South Africa as a consequence of solidarity and AfriForum coming to the States. That's complete balderdash. There are no sanctions on South Africa, none whatsoever. State the sanction. None. University of Stellenbosch academic Gouws said that the consequence of Trump's sanctions will affect all South Africans, particularly the poor communities. Well, first off, if she's actually a legitimate political scientist, how can she, in all good conscience and with a straight face, go on a camera and talk about sanctions? There are no sanctions. How can you be a political scientist and not understand what a sanction is? There are no sanctions against South Africa. There have been no penalties for South Africa whatsoever. The only actions the president's taken is an executive order on the 7th of February in which he suspended foreign aid for South Africa. But he had already suspended foreign aid to the entire world on the 20th of January. And then South Africa had to go and complain about it and pissed Trump off, and he issued an executive order a few weeks later and suspended aid for good for South Africa, owing to their actions. But there are no sanctions. Aid is not a right. Aid is a privilege. And it didn't even go to South Africa anyway. It went to third parties in South Africa. The government of South Africa didn't get the money. So the South African government is just angered that they have to step up now. And she talked about sovereignty being betrayed by AfriForum and Solidarity being here. They were lobbying members of the government. This is a common practice. There's no sovereignty betrayed. That's dishonest. Then she mentioned hate speech. There was no hate speech, certainly not in my video, and certainly no hate speech from Solidarity or AfriForum, and simply relaying the facts on the ground as a lobbying group. So that's what I challenge her on.
And Prof. Gouws faced backlash from a former colonel within the U.S. on her comments of dispelling the land grabs in South Africa.
I made no mention of land or farm murders in the 8-minute, 33-second video. The link below the description. You can go check it out. There's no mention of that. So she talks about this backlash because of land grabs. I didn't talk about land grabs. That's completely dishonest. Then, to rubbish my reputation after saying a colonel in the U.S.,
how prevalent is misinformation in news reporting, particularly regarding international relations like these between South Africa and the U.S.? And what are the common sources of this misinformation?
She says, how prevalent is misinformation news reporting? Well, I'll tell you, ma'am, it's quite prevalent because what you just said is misinformation. You distorted and misled. Do you give a link to my video, by the way, so people can go watch it, or you just simply mention a colonel in the U.S.? And by the way, why haven't you contacted me to interview me? Did you offer to give me a chance for a counterpoint? No, you didn't offer that. You didn't offer that. You simply went after me and misstated the facts. That's dishonesty. And it's a shame because in the past, NewzRoom Afrika has been one of the few media outlets that actually shows up at events and has people on the ground, reports, and we get breaking news. I think they do a pretty good job of that. They've had some very good reporters in the past. But of late, this is the sort of thing we see. Trying to connect things completely unconnected. As I said, I didn't talk about land grabs or farm murders in the video. Never mention it. And she said I was dispelling the land grabs. It was a backlash for me. Now, if there's a backlash here, I was questioning Amanda Ho's objectivity when it comes to sanctions. As a political scientist, she would know what a sanction is. She should know. If she doesn't know what a sanction is, that's disturbing. What with teaching at the distinguished Stellenbosch University. I know she knows what a sanction is. There are no sanctions in South Africa. This is pure fiction. Just like me having a backlash dispelling land grabs in South Africa that she talked about, because I didn't talk about that. It's just dishonest. What's going on with journalism? NewzRoom Afrika, if you're an objective news organization, you should get both sides of the story. Get the facts. But you're presenting one-sided stories that aren't even factual. What Professor Gouws said was factually incorrect, and I called her out on it, as an objective journalist would do. Well, folks, what do you have to say? Cheers.